Talk.
Well, scope of Illinois' pension funds being impacted by recent bank turmoil is unclear. Good morning. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Just some of the headlines here. Credit Suisse investors fear that weak management, not balance sheets, observes global data. And they've got questions about the European bank Credit Suisse as their shares plunged in trading, dragging down other major European banks and seeing how that could possibly impact others across the globe. Here's another headline for you. Big banks create a $30 billion rescue package for First Republic, another bank that's in trouble. You've got bank runs speeding up in the digital age, according to the Associated Press. And all of this as you've got a lot of your tax dollars invested in the big banks and the big investment houses and the hedge funds. How are your tax dollars invested in that? In a variety of different ways, including with pensions. And I talked with a couple of state representatives from both sides of the aisle about Illinois pensions because we have among the worst funded pensions in the country, about $140 billion unfunded liability. That's just for the 5 different state pension funds, right? The teachers' retirement system, the state employee retirement system, the state university retirement system, the judge retirement system, and the state legislative retirement system. All right. So $140 billion unfunded liability. That means promises that aren't funded at this time. And I think the average is about 45% total funding. You talk to actuaries and some of them say, hey, 90% funded is all right. They'd rather see 100% funded. But we're at about like 45% funded. About 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 4 of your tax dollars the state collects goes to pay for pensions. Think about that for a minute. About a quarter of every one of your tax dollars you pay to the state of Illinois goes to pay for a pension fund to pay somebody who's not working anymore. And that's, a part of the pension promise, so to speak. The state of Illinois tried to change this back in 2011 with a Tier 2, lesser benefits. But there's apparently some problems with that. It's not as beneficial, and that's caused some problems for state employees who are looking to retire as Tier 2 employees, not getting enough to retire on. But even though people say you shouldn't rely entirely on a pension to be your retirement for Tier 1, it very much is a very healthy retirement with people making more than what they made in while they worked just after a few years because of the 3% compounded COLA. But some of the pensioners out there in the public sector don't have that 3% compounded COLA. Some are looking to increase that. Yesterday in a House committee at the Illinois State House, there was about an hour-and-a-half meeting, a hearing in the Personnel and Pensions Committee for the House, and they heard from members of unions talking about how they need to change the benefits for Tier 2 to make it more beneficial so they can attract better employees. You also had city officials saying that we can't increase these benefits because it's going to impact the taxpayers. So it was really kind of a hodgepodge of different ideas on how to address the pensions. I didn't really hear too much about how the banking system is impacting the pension investments and how that impacts taxpayers. So we'll touch on that in a moment, but I did connect with the Democrat chair of the House Personnel and Pensions Committee, Stephanie Kifowit, Democrat out of Oswego, just to get a kind of an idea of what she plans to do with all of these different pension ideas that they heard about in the committee yesterday to deal with the growing problem of Illinois' unfunded pension liability.
Well, I think the number one issue facing the state of Illinois is our pension system, our unfunded liability, and ensuring that we don't fall contrary to federal law with regards to safe harbor provisions. So all those things included for the fiscal state of Illinois, I think we have to work very hard to solving this pension problem sooner than later. It's been, as you've heard, several years. 2011 was when the Tier 2 was passed. As you also heard testimony that individuals sounded the alarm to the deficiencies of Tier 2, considering it's been now over a decade, those issues just will compound and continue to cause fiscal stress in the future. And so to be fiscally responsible, what we are doing is getting expert testimony for provisions that we need to change that actually might cost the systems today, but the cost today is considerably less than if we do nothing and push the can down the road for decades yet to come. So for the fiscal stability of the state of Illinois, this is an issue that I'm committed to making sure we have a suitable and a strong policy fix this problem.
So what are the policies going to be to fix the problem? Republicans have their ideas and also their reactions to the questions of how these pension funds are being impacted by the banking turmoil that's happening. Again, I reached out to the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, the Consolidated Police Retirement Fund. They were the first to get back to me, and they shared that of the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, around $3 million is impacted by the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. They went on to say that that's just a small portion of their $49 billion in assets, or about 0.006%, a fraction of a percent. I also was told by the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund that they're 98% funded, so they're very healthy, among the most healthy in the country. They don't really expect much impact from these bank failures. The Illinois Police Officers Pension Investment Fund, the Consolidated Downstate Police Fund, they said that they are impacted by about $1.2 million of investments, which is about 0.014% of the overall total assets of $8.9 billion. So not much of an impact there, but these are just a small number of banks that have had some turmoil. How are we going to handle this in the future? I talked with State Representative Stephen Reich. He reacted to the pension funds being impacted by these banks, even if it's minimal, but he projects forward and sees what's possible in the future with European banks like Credit Suisse in trouble, how that could cascade and a domino impact across the globe, and how that could lead to a deep financial recession, which pension funds that are poorly funded in the state of Illinois, like the Chicago pension funds, like the Illinois General Assembly retirement system, even like the teachers' retirement, or all these other retirement systems that are below 50% funded, how are they going to be impacted by this? Here's Stephen Reich talking about this issue and highlighting the problems that he sees and what he thinks is a grand bargain that's needed to right the pension ship.
The Silicon Valley Bank thing, I realize IMRF has got money tied up in it, and they're going to take a hit. The other pension funds, I don't know. I think the bigger issue that we need to look at is what's going to happen with Credit Suisse over in Europe, because when the Saudis pull their funding from Credit Suisse, how many other European banks have got similar arrangements with these oil nations? And if they pull their funding for whatever reason, we're going to have a European bank crisis, and that's going to translate over to here. That is the bigger problem than Silicon Valley Bank. Credit Suisse is a real canary in the coal mines. But we've got to get ourselves off of this notion that we can do nothing about past benefits other than continue to throw money after money after money. We are one more economic disaster away from going right back down to 40, 45, 35, 20% funding on pensions. We sat in 22%, Chicago Pension Fund. We are one deep economic recession from them being completely insolvent. What are we going to do about that? There are only three ways we're going to fix our pension problems. It's going to be revenue increases, benefit cuts, or a complete collapse of the system. Chicago Police Department, Police Pension Fund shows us how close we are to complete collapse of at least one of these systems. My idea of a grand bargain entails, first of all, that federal fix, the Article 9 bankruptcy. And you know something, if what we could do is say, let's say we get an Article 9 fix and we are able to bring that back, say, okay, you're going to have to sit down at the table, you're going to have to negotiate. I would not have a problem at all if we could negotiate the benefit structure of those Tier 1 employees back down to something reasonable. And I'm not talking about a haircut. I'm talking about a very big, it's going to have to be big. Again, I dealt with the airline industry for 40 years. I know what it looks like when a pension plan goes broke. I saw those guys who were making a very nice pension lose more than half of it because the airline industry failed its obligation to make these payments. We're doing the same thing, but we don't have a safety net. But we've got to come to something.
So, again, that's State Representative Stephen Reich sharing some thoughts about a grand bargain he sees that includes, allowing for states to go bankrupt. because Illinois has, a huge amount of unfunded liability. And if nothing's done to allow for benefits to be reduced, maybe some tax increases to continue funding things, some kind of grand bargain of the sorts, then if we have a deep recession caused by the big banks, Reich is suggesting that you could see some pension funds that are poorly funded fail. And then what happens? You've got pensioners that are going to be out possibly even more than half of what they put in or what they expected to get. So how do we shift from defined benefits to defined compensation or deferred compensation, rather? These two ideas of how we save for retirement coming to a head, and rather fascinating to watch it, and we'll keep you posted on that as well. As again, around $1 out of every $4 goes to pensions. $1 out of every $4 the state collects in taxes goes to pensions. And Reich saying if nothing's done to address those costs, then the state's not going to be able to provide essential services. So it's that dire of a situation, according to